Cloze from the Education Hamper. Welcome back to another 11 plus learning video. Here we're going to be going through the Cloze 11 plus verbal reasoning. So I think the first thing we'll discuss is what is a Cloze test. Cloze test is intended to measure the reader's vocabulary skills, grammatical knowledge and general knowledge, along with ability to use context clues. So in the examples we're going through, we're going to have a sentence and it's going to have a word missing. 5 options will be given to us and we will have to figure out which is the best fit for that missing word. The critical thing here is some of these sentences are quite long, so when I go through them, I'll try and explain what the context is. This will help improve your vocabulary, which has a subsequent effect on the rest of the English parts of the 11 plus. So this will really help improve your comprehension skills. So in the case of, there are various types of cloze, but in this example, we'll be going through a couple of sentences, sometimes a paragraph, and we'll have multiple words with an option to fit into the space given. So without further ado, let's kick on to the first question. When I read the paragraph, please pause the video, take a bit of time to try and understand what the paragraph is saying, and then choose your best answer, and then play again and we'll go through the solution together. So question 1. Select a word. So we have a missing word here and we have 5 words below, and you'll see that's the same as we run through all of these examples. Select a word which can be used to fill the blank in the paragraph below. The paragraph starts, Blair stepped down in June 2007 and was succeeded as Prime Minister by Gordon Brown. So it looks like there was an individual called Blair who stepped down being the Prime Minister, so the main ruler of the country, and Prime Minister being here, the UK, and he was succeeded by an individual called Gordon Brown. Blair and his allies blank in making the Labour Party electable again, and after almost 2 decades in opposition. So when we have a blank in the middle of a sentence like this, I like to run through the entire paragraph and to help understand the context of what's happening here. So what this sentence seems to mean is that Blair and his allies, so there were people aligned with Blair who helped him, did something that made this Labour Party more electable. And they looked like they were out of power in the opposition for 2 decades, 20 years. So the next sentence is, to his critics, this achievement was made at the cost of abandoning the party's principles. So there are people criticizing him, but this achievement, which if we go back to the previous sentence, which is being elected after 2 decades in opposition, this achievement was made at a cost of abandoning the party's principles. So the party, the Labour Party in this case, has some embedded principles from the past, but in order to get back into power, he had to abandon some of these principles, which some people did not like, it seems, in the context of this. To his supporters, he was a man willing to risk public unpopularity in the pursuit of policies, most notably the war in Iraq, that he felt were morally justified. So he had supporters, and what this says is Blair seems to be willing to do things that are not popular with the general population of the country when he's in the pursuit of policy. So when he's making laws or when he's enacting acts such as it feels like most notably the war in Iraq. So maybe he suggested that the government needs to engage in a war in Iraq. But he did that on the grounding that he thought it was morally justified. So he felt internally that it was a good thing to do. Okay, so that's the context of this. So let's go back to the examples here. Let's get the pen. Blair and his allies. The best way to do this is probably to try and put in some words and see if they make any contextual sense. So Blair and his allies, first word, abilities in making the Labour Party electable again. It doesn't feel like it's the correct word putting in here. It doesn't fit the context of that sentence. So I think we can cross that one off. Next word we can look at strangest. Blair and his allies strangest in making Labour Party electable. So he's obviously done something to make the party electable again, and it wasn't it might have been strange, but in the context of putting ally strangers, that doesn't seem to make the best sense in this sentence. Um, Blair and his allies succeeded in making the Labour Party electable. So that seems like the correct word at the moment, the best choice of word of the three we've looked at, because um, he was successful in coming into power according to the census. So he did succeed, and both Blair and his allies succeeded in making the Labour Party electable again. Seems to be the best answer so far. So let's give that a little tick for now. Blair and his allies versatile in making that again. The sentence allies and versatile together don't seem to go, so that doesn't seem the correct one. Blair and his allies suggested in making the Labour Party electable again. So again, allies and suggestible and in, that seems to be not quite correct. So the best answer we have here is succeeded. Question 2. Some 2,000 years on, however, the ancient hieroglyphs have been decoded and Egyptology, the study of ancient Egypt, is booming. So 2,000 years on, the ancient hieroglyphs used by the Egyptians have been decoded, and it feels like it's saying that um, the study of this or understanding ancient Egypt is booming, and a lot of people want to study this. At a time when Latin and ancient Greek are rapidly vanishing from the school curriculum, more and more people are choosing to read hieroglyphs in their blank time. So Egyptology, understanding Egyptology in the school curriculums has really taken off. And what's affected most by that is that Latin and ancient Greek are not really being studied at school here. And the Egyptian galleries of our museums are packed with visitors, while the galleries dedicated to other ancient cultures remain empty. So the excitement of studying the ancient Egyptians with the hieroglyphs has meant that most people who go to museums want to see anything related to the Egyptians at the expense of uh, other cultures such as ancient Greek and perhaps the Romans here with Latin. So the sentence we're interested in, at a time when Latin and ancient Greek are rapidly vanishing from the school curriculum, more and more people are choosing to read hieroglyphs in their something time. So spare time. So that seems to make sense. People would be interested in it, um, and whenever they have some spare time away from things they normally do, they may, out of interest, want to study it. So that looks like a good example. Spray. Now that doesn't fit the context of this sentence, so that's not something that can happen. Hieroglyphs in their super time. And maybe people call their extra time super time, but most people don't, so it doesn't fit the context. Stock time. No, that's not something that will fit the context of this. You don't really study something in stock time. Stock time is not a real concept, so that's not the correct. And sober time. Now, there's no indication here, sober being you're not intoxicated. There's no indication that there was any kind of intoxication or um, within this paragraph or any option of it. So in the context of this paragraph, this doesn't seem to make sense. That's why it's important to read the entire paragraph when answering these questions. So that's not correct. So the answer here is spare. Question 3. Chamberlain was British blank space minister between 1937 and 40 and is closely associated with the policy of appeasement towards Nazi Germany. So this looks like there was a policy of appeasement. Nazi Germany at the time was rising 1937 to 1940. So this is at the early part of or the beginning of World War II, I guess. Um, and if he was a minister, and he's obviously one of the main names here. We probably need to find a context here. Boxes minister Doesn't seem to make sense. Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister is the main leader of the UK government or the British government here in this context. Um, so that could be a word that could fit there, Prime Minister. Clean Minister between 1937 and 1940. Perhaps he was a clean minister, but it doesn't really fit with creating policies of appeasement. He needs to have a quite a powerful position, and I guess he can take a lot of showers and baths, but I don't think it fits the context of this sentence. Prone Minister. Now, that doesn't fit the context of this sentence. So, what is he prone to? Um, when you read the entire sentence, no, it feels out of context. So, that's probably not the example. And polar minister. Now, there's nothing about being in either the North Pole or the South Pole. It's got no context at all. So, that's out of the way. So, the answer here is prime minister. 4. His mother ascended to the throne on 6 February 1952, which made young Charles' heir apparent at 3 years old. So it looks like when they said ascended the throne, um, maybe his mother is a queen of some sort. Maybe her mother or father, who was the ruler at the time, passed away, so she ascended the throne. She now was the person who sat on the throne essentially at this date, and she had a son. It looks like who made it because of his name Charles, and his heir apparent at 3 years old. So, if anything were to happen to his mother, he would then become king. He was given the title of Duke of Cornwall as well as Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Carrick, Baron of Renfrew, Lord of the Isles and Space, and Great Steward of Scotland. So, by his mother ascending the throne, he was given a number of these titles because he's royalty. So, what would be Baron of Renfrew, Lord of the Isles and Space, racist, doesn't fit the context. Advise, he's not advising anything here, he's got a title, so advise is not the right context. Laying, now that doesn't fit this sentence at all because you wouldn't be Lord of the Isles and laying and the Great Steward of Scotland, so that's probably not it. So remember, we think he's royalty of some kind. So anything that's perhaps a title around royalty, Isles and primes, mm, that doesn't feel fits the context, and prince. So prince is a royal title. So let's see if that works. Lord of the Isles and prince and Great Steward of Scotland. So in this case here, because we suggested that he was in fact royalty, Prince would be the best example here. So again, read the context of the paragraph, understand the paragraph so you can really figure out which of these words fit in there. We can eliminate a number of these words, but sometimes two of these words seem similar. That's why it's important to understand the sentence or the paragraph you're reading for these questions that we're going through. Right. Question 5. Josephine Butler was born on 13 April 1828 in Northumberland. So this individual, Josephine Butler, was born this date in Northumberland, which some part is in part of England in the north. Her father, John Gray, was a strong advocate of social reform and a campaigner against the slave trade. So it seems like during this period, 1828 or so, there was still a slave trade, and her father was against it. He campaigned against it and looking for reform. Um, and when he says social reform, maybe there's a governmental aspect of what he was doing. His space was Earl Grey, British Prime Minister between 1830 and 1834. So it's a little bit difficult to think of what this could be. Maybe um, maybe whoever the British Prime Minister was related to John Gray in some way. So let's see if that's something we can think about once we read the context of this. His chosen was Earl Grey, British Prime Minister between 1830. Now Earl Grey is also something is a name of a tea, but I don't think he's talking about tea here. So he's not chosen Earl Grey tea here. So that's probably not the right context. His defend was Earl Grey. Again, doesn't seem like it fits that context. His hollow was Earl Grey, British Prime Minister. You don't really put someone's um, relation in the word of hollow. His shared was Earl Grey. That doesn't fit in the context of the sentence. His cousin was Earl Grey, British Prime Minister between 1830 and 1834. So that seems to be the best answer. It fits the sentence best. So the answer here is cousin. 6. In 1980, Space Charles began a relationship with Lady Diana Spencer, and they publicly announced their engagement on 24th February 1981. So this individual called Charles, who seems to have a title ahead of him, began a relationship with Lady Diana Spencer, and they announced it to everyone outside, I guess, the immediate family, just to the entire, perhaps, country. In this case, if we think we have a title, that they were engaged to be married on this date. So let's see if we can find something that fits this. Novels, it's not really a title, and it doesn't fit the context. Corner, doesn't fit the context either. In 1980, Corner Charles began a relationship. So I don't think I've heard of anyone ever called Corner as a first name. So I'm skeptical about that one. So let's cross that out. In 1980, Prince Charles began a relationship with Lady Diana Spencer. So that seems to fit the fact that he has a title, and the fact that they publicly announced means that he's probably someone special to the public, and in this case, he's royalty. So that seems to fit the context of the sentence. Housed, so fit again doesn't fit the context, and fallen, no context, not doesn't not fit the context. It doesn't feel like the first name or a title of anyone. So answer here is Prince. Question 7. Ben's novel Orunoko 1688 was the story of an enslaved African prince and is now considered a foundation space in the development of the English novel. So it feels like Ben's novel, um, which was a story about an enslaved African prince, seems to have had a big impact in the development of how English novels are written here. So it seems to be a foundation something of how modern English novels are written. As well as plays and prose, Ben wrote poetry and translated works from French and Latin. So this individual wrote poetry and was multilingual, so understood French and Latin and translated. In her time, she was a celebrity, unusual for her independence as a professional writer and her concern for equality between the sexes. So she was a celebrity, well known to the public, um, unusual for her independence as a professional writer. And so unusual that she was independent and a professional writer, and had she advocated equality between the sexes. So I guess between male and females, she wanted equality. So now we know that her book is a foundation of the English novels. We need to find something that will fit foundation. Um, the word will fit this this sentence that will and make sense within this paragraph. So foundation stone. So generally, when you're building something, you have a strong foundation stone at the bottom. So, and if you put that in the context of this sentence, if we're saying that her novel Orunoko is now considered the basis of most English novels, foundation stone seems like a good answer here right now to fit this space. So let's mark that as a possible. Foundation price. We don't really say price is a foundation of the development of anything, so that's probably not correct. Foundation steam. No, you don't say it. It doesn't fit the context. Doesn't sound correct. Foundation using in the development doesn't fit the context of that sentence. And foundation tower. Now, you don't really have foundation towers uh, within buildings or anything that will show that kind of strength that will allow for the development of things. So that's probably not correct. So here, foundation stone is the correct answer. Question 8. As chief engineer to London's Metropolitan Board of Works in the mid-19th century, Bazalgette had a significant impact both on London's appearance and space his design of an efficient sewage system on the health of its inhabitants. So Bazalgette seems to have had a big effect on how London was, um, well, London's appearance or what it looks like, and he seems to have designed an efficient sewage system for the city as well, which had an impact on the health of the people living within London. So Bazalgette had a significant impact both on London's appearance and something space his design. So what word could fit here? Forgive. Forgive his design. I don't think anyone was forgiving this design because it had a good impact. Well, it had an efficient sewage system, which seems to have had on the health of its inhabitants. So it had some effect on the health. So no context here about forgiveness for his design. So that doesn't seem right. Through had a significant impact both on London's appearance and through his design of an efficient sewage system on the health of its inhabitants. So that sentence flows. It seems to be the correct word at the moment. What other three words do we have? Ringing doesn't fit the context. Antique. You don't antique the design per se in this sentence. Antique his design of an efficient sewage system. That doesn't seem correct. And compact his design. There's nothing. So compact and efficient might have some sort of similar context within a sentence, but here um, it I think through his design of an efficient sewage system on the health of its inhabitants. So I think compact doesn't make the best answer here. Through does. So this is the answer we're going to go for. Through. 9. On his return to America, he was elected the first vice president under George Washington and served for 2 terms. So this individual returned to America and he was elected first vice president, which is quite a senior role within the government under I assume the president here, George Washington, and he served for 2 terms. So I think each term is 4 years, so that's 8 years in total. In the presidential something of 1796, which was the first to be contested by political parties. So this feels like there's maybe an election here or a vote, and it was contested by first time it was contested by political parties. Adams sided with the Federalist Party and was elected president. So I'm assuming this Adams is this individual at that time, um, who subsequently sided with this party and was elected president after George Washington. So now, what would be the best answer here? We think it's some sort of election, so what would be the best word for election? Accurate? No. Confused? No. Doesn't seem like a word for election. Composer? No, it wasn't a composer. Any place? That seems a bit random, that word, so that's probably not the best word. Campaign. So campaign could be another word for election. The campaigning runs of elections. So in the presidential campaign of 1796, which was the first to be conducted, that that seems like the best sentence for the best word for this sentence. So here we are. Campaign is our answer. Concludes the end of this video. Thank you very much for walking through this with me. Cloze is a really important part of the 11 plus. It not only helps you contextually understand the sentences, improves your vocabulary and your reading skills and your ability to improve your comprehension. So really work on these Cloze examples. I'll be making more videos on these. Please leave some comments below suggesting any improvements I can make or any changes that might help run through these. But thank you very much for joining me, and I really hope to see you again next time. Have a great day. Bye.